Welcome back. Where we ended off yesterday was basically talking about how you think, how you feel will determine how you act. That your personality ultimately determines your personal reality. Let us now take the next step forward and see what you are made up of. If I were to ask you who you are, what would you say? You would say that you're a bunch of thought, emotions, feelings, anticipations, hopes, disappointments, fears, worries. In other words, what makes you up? And where is that version of you stored? Let us now define the brain. And the reason these definitions are important is so that we can put a context around these intangible aspects of ourselves. Because remember, thoughts can't be seen, right? Emotions can't be seen. They cannot be measured, but they are quite an active component of us. So let us now proceed on to look at each feature within our body and see how they correspond to these intangible aspects that make us up. So if you think of the brain, let's think of the brain here as the operating system of us. Okay, and when we speak of us, we're speaking of nothing but an operating system in our brain consisting of our thoughts, emotions, memories, dreams, hopes, feelings, fantasies, fears, skills, habits, pain, and joy. In other words, this is what makes up you and me and the rest of us. Now, what does the brain consist of? Anatomically, the brain is made up of what's called neurons, which are brain cells. And in a typical human being, the brain cell is made up of 100 billion network of these neurons. And these neurons, their job is to basically make new connections. New connection, new awareness, and create a new mind. So in other words, when you learn a skill, when you're learning a skill, your brain, the network of your brains, those 100 billion neurons, arrange themselves in a specific sequence and create a pattern. So if you're a child and you're learning how to walk, you're going to fumble a couple of times. You're going to fall down a couple of times until you create the proper circuitry in your brain wiring to learn how to walk. So amongst those 100 billion neurons that are firing and wiring at any given moment, there's a particular circuit that maps the art of walking. And when you have mapped the art of walking, that is called a new mind. A mind that is wired for walking. Okay, so let's take a few more examples. If you say that you're going to be driving a car, so a person who's learning how to drive a car will first understand the mechanics of the car, he will understand the features of the car, he will go behind the wheel and he will start driving the car. And he may make mistakes until he has mastered a particular sequence of neurons that will teach him how to drive a car, right? And when you do it enough times, it becomes embedded in your operating system. So for drivers who have driven for 15, 20 years, they don't have to think about every single approach that is required to drive a car. It becomes automatic. Just like a child learns how to walk and may take a couple of months to learn how to walk, but once he or she has mastered walking, they don't have to think about walking. So in other words, what this means is every new neural network connection that happens in our brain creates a new level of awareness and therefore creates a new mind. So mind in that respect is nothing but brain in action. According to neuroscience, mind is nothing but brain in action. And these actions are nothing but focused actions that require attention and awareness. So let's look at a few more examples. So a mind that requires you to drive will have a very specific code of neural networks. Okay, there will be a specific pattern that will map the art of driving a car. That'll create a new mind. this mind will be very different from a mind of an artist who applies makeup, right? If you're a makeup artist, there will be certain circuits within your brain that will fire and wire and will create a unique sequence that'll master the art of putting makeup on. And when you do it enough times and it gets encoded in your brain wiring, that mind will be a new mind of a makeup artist. Okay? Similarly, if you have a mind of someone who is hopeless, so suppose you just tend to just be pessimistic, or you tend to just feel down during certain hours of the day, there will be a sequence of specific neural networks out of those 100 billion neurons that you have. They will arrange themselves in a specific sequence. And that sequence, done enough time, is going to create a mind of hopelessness or a mind of boredom. Again, do it enough times. So the idea of mental rehearsal, you do it so many times that it becomes automatic. You wire the system, and now you've hardwired it to create a new mind for hopelessness. Similarly, if you look at another sequence, right, for somebody who is an optimist or somebody who's hopeful or someone who's happy, their brain wiring will show another sequence of neurons, again connected in specific unique ways that will give them the mind of someone who's always optimistic, someone who's always happy, right? And these processes are going on unconsciously in our head because we have subconsciously wired these emotions, these aspects of what we think we are, what you think you are, what you think I am, what you think us is, in this warehouse. Okay, and if our brain is just an operating system with neurons that are firing and wiring unconsciously, what we are doing through the idea of mental rehearsal is wiring and hardwiring these neural pathways to form our identity, our personality. Okay? So you, in other words, if we had to scientifically define you, according to neuroscience, you are nothing but a very unique arrangement of brain cells in the gray matter of your brain that defines every single one of your experiences. This would be a scientific definition of what you are. Okay? Now, for the longest time, people believed, science believed, that you're hardwired to be a certain way and nothing can be done. So you are bound to your genetic destiny. You are bound to be like your mother. You are bound to be like your father, because the brain was always viewed as a hardware. Okay, so it is a software feature, but that software was static, like it was fixed. It was not malleable. Okay, until very recently, this was contradicted. How was it contradicted? Science came to understand, in neuroscience, there is a principle called neuroplasticity. Okay, and that neuroplasticity basically says that the brain is able to reconstruct itself in novel ways under two conditions. When you're learning something new, you're able to change your brain, you're able to change these pathways, or when a new experience has happened to you, good or bad, okay, it's going to force your circuitry to rearrange. This idea of neuroplasticity became huge because it answered the very fundamental question. And the question was, can we influence the brain to fire in different sequences and patterns and different combinations in order to produce a different state of mind? In other words, if I was tired of being hopeless, if I was tired of being in pain, if I was tired of being frustrated, if I was tired with my life, if I was tired of XYZ, chances are it's already hardwired in my personality, and that's why I identify with it. Neuroplasticity says that the brain is malleable. That means these connections can be broken and reconstructed in a way that you want. Now, how do we know this? Because it can be measured. Okay? There are numerous, if not millions of brain scans now that are out in literature, in academic journals, that show that a person, for example, who has had a near-death experience, their brain wiring has completely changed compared to who they were before they had a near-death experience. If you look at the brain scans of people who are having a transcendental moment in a meditation, okay, the brain starts firing different areas, different compartments within their frontal lobe, within their limbic system. All around the brain, certain areas start lighting up and certain areas start shutting down. Okay, and this is a way that you're seeing in real time that the brain of the person is being rewired, it's being rearranged. Okay, and this is why you'll see when a person is having an out-of-body experience, it is very visceral, right? They feel it in their body, they feel it in their brain, and their brain is being chemically altered to show that a new neural pathway has been formed. Similarly, a person who is having a near-death experience comes out of their body, is able to see their physical body, but now they have a higher level of perception, shows in their brain scans that they have been altered. Certain neural networks have been cut off and new channels have been made. That's why when they come back, they feel like a new person. They no longer identify with their reality because they have had an experience that alters them neurochemically, right? Neurologically in your brain and chemically in your body. Because remember, body and mind work together. All right? Similarly, people who've had cancer and have had instant remissions. So there are cases in the academic journal where people have had instant remissions from a debilitating disease where a diagnosis was given that they won't live past 5 years or 10 years, and they come back out of it because of changes that they have made. And these changes are not just external changes, but these studies show that there's a fundamental change in the shift of consciousness, that they've made a decision past that point that nothing will deter their healing. And that decision with that level of firmness and that level of intention causes the neural networks to respond to an observing mind, you. But you, not in terms of your thoughts and emotions, but a consciousness that is existing beyond your thoughts and your emotions that you're identifying yourself with. Something larger than that is calling and making a shot. It's making a call and it's saying that I want to heal. And this prognosis or this diagnosis by a medical technician or a doctor is not going to deter me from living my life. Okay? The idea of thinking differently, right? So a lot of advocates of positive thinking, of changing your life around, making dietary changes, whatever it takes to make a change, the brain adheres to. And when the brain adheres to it, it creates a new mind, right? So these neural circuits are not fixed in time. They're not hardwired in time. They are hardwired because you have conditioned yourself through mental rehearsal. Okay, you have done something so many times that it becomes an automatic process. Now, this automatic process is running the show. That does not mean that the process cannot be altered. It can be changed. You can have a new process that can become automatic. Okay, so this is beyond just positive thinking. This is saying, I'm going to come to the roots of the issue. I'm going to understand my neurochemistry. I'm going to make a decision that doesn't just pass my brainstem, but also hits the heart, so that when the body and the mind are coherent, this network can be influenced. Okay, so here's the paradox then. All right, here's the ultimate paradox, and this is a question worth asking. If we can truly change the brain, okay, and therefore change the mind, because the mind is nothing but the result of a network of a brain, okay, a neural pathway of a brain. So if we can truly change the brain and change the mind, then who is doing it? Who is doing it? The brain is just an organ, right? The brain is just an organ. It's following instruction. The mind is a result of a particular group of networks coming together to learn a skill. And so you will say a mind. For example, the person who's learning to drive a car has a mind of a car, right? Has developed the mind, the ability to drive a car. So therefore you can say that he has a mind adjusted to driving a car. He has now developed a mind to become hopeful, or you've developed a mind to fine-tune the art of putting makeup on, or you've developed a mind to become a positive person. You've developed a mind to be able to do public speaking, even though you were not able to do that before. So if the mind is a result of brain circuitry being put in a specific way, who is doing it? Who's doing it? Consciousness. Okay? Consciousness is doing this. Now, who is consciousness? What is consciousness? Remember, we were talking about energy in the first session? All right. So if you were to define consciousness very loosely, consciousness is nothing but awareness. And what is awareness? The ability to pay attention. Attention to what? Energy. Where you are directing the flow of energy. So remember in the quantum field where you read that experiment, where we're talking about that experiment, where you have a conscious observer, you have this field of frequency, you need one conscious observer, the mind, to be able to look at that field and influence the dynamic of that field and make it real in your 3D world. This is exactly what we're talking about. The act of doing that is consciousness. It is consciousness, the ability to be aware that you are aware of your thoughts, automatic thoughts that have become so unconscious in your system that are writing your state of being, your personality. And if you're able to be aware, you are using consciousness to manipulate your mind and body to create a new personality. And that personality that you have now created is very different from this one. It is very different from this one. It cannot look like this one because this comes from an old mind. Okay, sets of mind that has created your personality, which is a result of your personal reality right now. But that new state of mind, the consciousness that you have used to reconnect and rewire into a new set of neural networks through neuroplasticity, is a different mind. A mind of hope, a mind of happiness, a mind of mystical moments, a mind of possibilities. It cannot be this. And therefore, this is the key to transformation. To know that the brain circuitry is malleable through neuroplasticity, where you're learning new experiences. Every time you learn a new experience or a new art, every time you learn something new, your brain wiring is changing instantaneously, within moments. So remember we said you're coming in and out of reality? You're in and out of this field of frequency. And if 80% of your thoughts are the same thoughts that you had the day before yesterday, you're in the same mind. You're not doing it, you're not going anywhere. But somehow you learn something new. Okay, it makes sense. You know what you're doing. You know why you're doing it. The how becomes very easy. Because now you don't need to convince your body of anything. It's convinced. It's learned new information. New information creates new wiring. New wiring creates the new you. So now your thoughts are not of hopelessness. They are not of abandonment. Because you know that if you start focusing on this, you create this reality. Because it's so, you can shift in and out so quickly. It's so seamless. And therein lies the key for transformation. All right? And these changes have been measured. Okay? There's trillions and trillions of documentation right now in the medical journal that is showing that when there are physical changes in the brain and the body of the person who has made a decision to change. And these are the underpinnings of how these decisions can be influenced. It is the knowledge that we need to make a change within ourselves. I'll see you in the next lecture.